Thank you for the nice introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you are online. So my name is Yang Liu. I'm from the Division of Bioequivalence III, Office of Bioequivalence, OGD. So it is my great pleasure to be here to attend this forum and to share some thoughts from OGD regarding the pediatric excipient evaluation from a BE perspective. So hopefully we can all learn something from what we have researched and learned internally, and we would love to share that with the industry. So hopefully by the end of my presentation, the audience can grab some take-home messages or some learning objectives. The first one is to understand the rationale and importance of excipient safety evaluation in pediatric population for generics. And also, hopefully, the industry can have a better understanding of how the OGD's current approach is for the evaluation of excipient in pediatric population when we're reviewing an ANDA. So this is my disclaimer. This presentation reflects the views of the presenter and should not be construed as a representative of FDA's view or policies. So first, let's talk about excipient safety. So I would like to start this talk by sharing, if not the most important, but definitely one of the most critical landmarks in the history of drug and food regulation is the FD&C Act 1938. Actually, the passing of these sets of laws is actually a result of a tragedy. It's known as the 1937 Elixir sulfanilamide disaster or incidents. On the left side, I show the drug. That was the original bottle back, almost 100 years ago, and also the active ingredient, sulfanilamide, in it. So the drug, sulfanilamide, was an antibiotic. We don't use that often today, but think about that. That's 1930s, and by the time penicillin has not been purified. So that has been a success, and it cured a lot of patients. And there was a increasing demand for a liquid form of this antibiotic. So one of the drug manufacturers, they decided to go for it and to manufacture a liquid-based sulfanilamide. However, in the drug, so the disaster actually is not caused by this drug itself. It's actually caused by an excipient, an untested excipient added into the into the liquid-based drug. And that tragedy, and that response for this tragedy, the excipient, untested excipient, is called diethylene glycol. And that tragedy actually caused at least 107 deaths. Just remember, 100 years ago, we do not have social media, we do not have smartphones, so this is the very conservative death toll, and the actual number could be higher. And within these victims, mostly are children, unfortunately. So this actually brings to a deeper thinking about how we should evaluate the safety of a drug, not only the safety of the drug itself, but also something we put in the drug formulations. From this tragedy, a very important lesson we learned is not all excipients are inert substance. Some may have, and even higher, very high potential toxicity. In general, at this time as we're talking, if an applicant wants to develop a drug, no matter it's a new drug or a generic drug, the applicant must identify and characterize excipient, not only the API, but also the excipient in the proposed drug formulation, and provide information to demonstrate that the excipients do not affect or interfere with the efficacy and the safety. More things are actually, this is not just recommendation or guidance, this is actually law. And if you are interested in more of these, this is where you can find additional information. So at the FDA, as I said in this previous Elixir tragedy, most of the victims are pediatric. That's because they are more vulnerable comparing to adults. So FDA generally consider pediatric population to include those patients from birth to younger than 17 years old, or we can say from birth to 16 years of age. And sometimes we do further characterize them into subgroups, as I listed here, depending on their age. And that sometimes is very important for either the efficacy evaluation and the safety evaluation, including what I'm about to talk today. So you are more than welcome to visit the FDA Pediatric website to get more information if you're interested. So the reason that examining the safety or potential toxicity of excipient in pediatric patients is that critical is because the excipient are commonly, the excipient commonly used and determined safe in grown-ups are not necessarily safe in pediatric population. They may have, significant toxicity or toxicological risks. So there is an FDA-drafted guidance published in 2019. Actually, is for the industry to understand how the excipient can be evaluated using an inactive ingredient database, or IID. However, at this moment, the IID, it does not provide enough information regarding different exposure models, including safety in pediatric population or other specific subpopulations. On this slide, I'm showing like a list of known excipient that may have safety concerns. I just want to point out it's very hard to read from here, but there are a lot of literatures online that we can find. And what I want to point out is this list is not exclusive, and it's not like only excipient on this list may have a risk, a potential risk for pediatric population. And believe it or not, I'm pretty sure that as we are gathering more and more toxicology data, this list can only grow longer, not shrinking. So in general, in ENDA applications, the recommended BE study, usually we do evaluate the safety. However, even though the drug can be given to pediatric patients, the recommended BE studies usually only recruit or enroll grown-up patients due to ethical or recruiting challenges. So additional pediatric excipient safety evaluation is very important and is very needed, and that's our current practice at the OGD. So before I jump into the next part, I would like to give my first challenging question or check mark. If the maximum daily intake of an excipient in the proposed formulation is below or within the limit of the same excipient for per FDA's IID, it will be deemed safe and acceptable for all ages, including adult and pediatric. Thank you very much. Yeah, it is false because, as I said, the IID is not that comprehensive and it does not reflect the potential risk and potential acceptability for subgroup, including pediatrics. So my next part will be, how we actually do the pediatric excipient evaluation in the OGD. Oh, okay, so let's just jump into I'm sorry about that, the formatting, I think. Let's jump into the second bullet point. So at the OGD, when we're reviewing ENDA and we're reviewing the formulation data, actually all excipient will be evaluated for pediatric population if the RLD can be given to those younger patients. And our first step is usually to compare the excipient levels in the test formulation with the same excipient in the RLD or the approved or approved generic versions of the same product. The reason is the RLD and the approved generics, they will have identical target patient population, identical route of administration and recommended dose, etc. So that is the most conservative way to do the pediatric excipient evaluation. However, if the excipient level in the test formulation cannot be justified by RLD or the approved generics, it will be, it's not like, there's a red light, we do extra steps. It will be compared with other approved drugs for the same route of administration. And in addition, an applicant can submit additional supporting evidence, including toxicology data, literatures, regulatory history, etc., for supporting their conclusion that the use of a certain excipient at a certain level is safe and is not causing concerns in pediatric population. So this kind of work is not only done within the Office of Bioequivalence or divisions of bioequivalence. Is usually involved more offices and sometimes super offices, including the bio team, the clinical team, toxicity team, and also product quality team. And I do want to point out the evaluation of pediatric excipient safety is based on the maximum daily dose. So it's not based on the per unit dose, it's based on how much a patient may take during a day. And that will be taking into consideration of the MDD, maximum daily dose, for different drugs. So pediatric drugs usually have recommended dose for different age groups, and sometimes we do, and need to do further evaluation depending on what age of patients will take this drug specifically. But generally speaking, there is what we call kind of a risk-based approach. That is to evaluate the safety of an excipient in the youngest age group per ROD label. However, this needs to be justified to see that the same excipient will cause the most concern in the youngest group. The rationale behind this risk-based approach is because the youngest age group is usually the most vulnerable group. They have the least developed physiological immunity, and they have the most immature physiological condition or development, such as metabolic system, the GI development, renal development, etc. There is a potential higher risk in the younger pediatrics for the same excipient comparing to older pediatrics or adults. We also need to consider, especially for some older ROD products that has been approved like years ago, the swallowability. Like per FDA's current thinking, we determined that patients younger than 6 years of age will have a potential challenge to swallow a solid base or tablets or a capsule intact. So we also take that into consideration. So let me use a case example to show you how we are actually seeing this evaluation, on how we are doing this evaluation. Let's just assume this is based on a real case, I need to point out, but for confidentiality reason, I just kind of use some dummy numbers, but the excipient names are actually from the real case. I just point out 4 excipients in this example. And as we can see, the first one, microcrystalline cellulose, and the third one, magnesium stearate, they are actually below the level in the ROD or an approved generic version. So in this case, as mentioned before, that's the most conservative way, and these 2 excipients will be determined acceptable in the proposed test formulation. However, the other 2, mannitol and BHT, they actually exceed the limit we can find in the ROD or the past generic version, either because they have a higher level or because BHT was not actually found in any of the approved drug for the same product. So we do take the next step. We need to take the next step is compare that with other approved drug for the same context of use. As I said, based on the risk-based evaluation approach, we evaluate this excipient in a newborn. And I can see, as we can see in this slide, mannitol can be justified by other drugs, while we're still having a hard time finding any drug approved before that has a higher BHT level in the group of newborn. So this will raise a concern that whether this can cause safety issue or can cause a toxic effect, has a toxic effect in this subgroup. And very limited information can be found regarding the BHT safety in newborns from the literatures. So we do need to point out, and that's actually what happened, is we actually pointed out to the applicant, asking them to provide additional toxicity data or additional evidence to demonstrate the safety of this particular excipient for a newborn use. So then my next challenge question is, which of the following statement is true? Number one, OGD only evaluate safety of the most riskiest excipient in pediatric population, or OGD evaluated this pediatric excipient safety evaluation based on MDI, or the excipient levels in proposed generic formulation is evaluated only by comparing to the RODs. And the answer will be the second one. The problem with the first one is we're not only evaluating the riskiest excipient, we actually evaluate all excipient if the drug can be given to pediatric population. And the problem with the third is, yes, we do compare that with ROD and other approved generic, but that's not all. If these drugs cannot cover our test formulation, we do take extra steps. There are a couple of extra considerations when we are doing this pediatric excipient evaluation. When the drug or when the proposed excipient level cannot be justified by ROD or approved generics. So the first consideration is whatever drug we are trying to use to justify the current formulation, it should be given to same or even younger age groups based on the rationale I provided before. And also the drug we want to reference or we want to use as a justification, it should be available on the market, or at the bottom, at least it should be discontinued, not due to safety or effective reasons. And the context of use during the excipient evaluation is very, very important. And I will spend the next slide talking about that in a little bit detail. I still have 3 minutes, I guess. So the first concern or the first item we check about context of use is the route of administration. At this moment, we cannot accept like a cross route administration justification. So the drug we want to use for justification must have the same route of administration. The second thing we consider is the duration of treatment. That is because the excipient evaluation we do is based on MDI, is based on the daily intake. However, the drug can be taken for a different amount of periods. So some are taken for a short term, some for chronic use, etc. An example would be if, saying we're reviewing a drug for supplemental hormone medication, and we want to justify one of the excipient. Probably we do not want to use a PET imaging agent, which you just take it once. So this consideration is based on potential risk due to long-term intake. We also consider the severity of indicated diseases between the drug we want to justify and the drug we want to use for justification. An example is if we are actually trying to justify excipient in a formulation of an anti-coughing syrup, probably it's not the best idea to refer to a chemotherapy formulation because the patient will take different kinds of risks. And also swallowability of a solid dose form, if the LD specified actually make it very clear that the drug should not be chewed or should not be crushed before taken. If that's the case, we do need to take into swallowability issue in younger pediatrics, for example, younger than 6 years of age. So I can't help showing this picture. This picture was actually cited from my dear colleague from the OGD. Don't worry, this is not a real picture. This is my colleague generating this picture using AI. So this just reflects our thought that we do want to take consideration of as much as possible during our excipient evaluation. So this will be my last challenge question. It's a little bit long, but let's say if we can think from an OB reviewer perspective now. So the proposed generic drug in a new ANDA is an orally dosed anti-infectious drug. It can be given to grown-ups and patients older than pediatric patients 2 years of age and older. The recommended dosing regimen is a 4-week treatment, daily treatment. I should have said that. So which of the following if they are all approved, they were all approved in the past, which of them are the best to justify the excipient in current test formulation? I'll just pause here and give everybody like a few seconds to read the options. Okay, I'm going to jump into the answer. The answer is B. Instead of talking more about option B, again, let's see what the problem there are with option A and C. In answer A, it says an anti-inflammatory drug indicated for colitis in adult patients. It has a 3-month recommended dosing period. So this actually is not recommended for pediatric, so it cannot be used to justify pediatric drugs, even though it has a longer recommended dosing treatment period. And for number 3, an anti-seizure drug that can be given to grown-ups and pediatric 1 year and older, but it has a boxed warning for toxicity in the RLD. So this one actually, if we forget about the severity of the disease, this is a acceptable justification. However, if we do consider the severity of the disease these 2 drugs are treating, this is not the best idea. So to wrap up my presentation, there are a lot of thanks I want to give to my dear colleagues. First of all, I want to special thanks to Dr. Partha Roy, the OB director, who's actually presenting here. So Partha actually made the whole thing, multiple projects and multiple working groups available and going in the Office of Bioequivalence, and thank you very much for the support. I do want to especially thank April and Lisa from OB and OSE respectively. They are the pioneers that actually put these projects on table. I want to thank Dr. Ki Ren, and she's Deputy Director of DB3. She has been, along the way, supporting and also leading the working groups, multiple working groups. I just list 2 working groups here: the Pediatric Evaluation Working Group and the internal Pediatric Excipient Database Group for a lot of supports. And last but not least, I want to thank OGD, OB, and OSC management and staff for their great support. And of course, thank you for your attention. I would love to take questions. Please feel free to put it in the chat. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn it to my dear colleague, Tao. Thank you very much.